Hello, everybody. You should be able to hear us. What's going on, guys?
Hello.
We have a special guest today. Who's that?
Yeah.
Hello?
Welcome.
Who are you? New YouTube, who dis?
This is me, Mr. Brass. Nice to be here today.
How you doing?
Good to take a break, and because usually I'm always talking to just fellow men in my own shows, so it's great to be able to chat with some more women.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I'm excited. We as most of our viewers and ourselves are aware, 4 of us are women, and not everybody is aware of this. It's something that's in contention. But we tend to talk about a lot of the women perspective of things, whether that be, I don't know, what do we talk about? Relationships, whether it be parenting. A lot of it comes from a female point of view. Now, we try to be pretty open-ended in, like, general advice or whatever we're talking about, but it's good to have a dude come in here, a friendo come in here and give us a little bit of a different perspective, and then maybe we can learn some things, maybe they can learn some things, and we're just gonna have a grand old time.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting, because, you know, I like hearing from the female perspective myself when it comes to certain political issues, along with, you know, just general issues altogether. I'm very
politics.
interested. Unlike, you know, I find many people in my sort of sphere that I hang out with, I do notice that there is tunnel vision, and I try to, well, I fall into that sometimes. I do try to break out of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's really easy to get caught in, like, a little bit of groupthink. So sometimes it's good to branch out and bring somebody else in who can have those conversations in like, not a dumpster fire manner once in a while. Yeah. Although dumpster fires are fun, it's just once in a while if you legitimately want to have a conversation or expand your perspective of things. Sometimes it's good to reach out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I believe, you know, in today's chat we were going to go over domestic violence, particularly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how the struggles that women have and the struggles that men have are different but considerably similar, I've noticed. But I think that there's not a whole lot of focus that goes on to we're all people. So I thought it'd be a good idea to bring a guy in to talk about a little bit more from their perspective.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the stuff that's come out recently.
Yeah, with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know what that's about, go check out my other videos.
I like to remind you that men that go through domestic abuse, they tend to not be Johnny Depp.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the answer is that
advantage.
Anybody.
They also
can
tend
go
to
through
not
that.
record it either, and get actual evidence that people are still ignoring.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
I know, which is even more ridiculous when you consider the fact that he has recordings.
The thing that kills me is, okay, for a couple things, is one, anybody can be the victim of abuse. If there's any takeaway from that, it's that it can be anybody. Doesn't matter what your status is. The other thing that is the takeaway is that if these were one of the best things to come out of having everybody having phones is everybody's got a little recorder. If you ever feel like things aren't okay or you're feeling unsure of yourself, just hit the fucking record button, man. You don't have to do anything with it. It's not like you have to take it to a news outlet.
Well, yeah.
But it's funny, like, it's not, like, I guess it's not easy for men, because for so long they have been told that they are supposed to be the tough ones, and they're supposed to be the ones who should take it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't come to their mind that that they're desensitized to what abuse is.
Yeah.
Let's just say, and they won't realize when they're in the thick of it, oh, this is something not right, I should not let this happen to me, or I should do something about it, or record it.
Or I should be able to do something about it myself, and I shouldn't need to reach out for any help.
Yeah. So like we say for any female domestic abuse survivor, I would say the best thing would be to talk to other people about it. If you're in doubt, talk to someone, and possibly
Reach out.
someone who will understand your situation, because there's some, you have friends who might go like, man, dude, what are you talking about? She's just a tiny person or something like that. How can she, hit you or something like that? Yeah, give it back to her. Someone might
I'm
say.
a tiny
It's not like
person. I
it
could
would
beat the
actually
shit out of a
hurt.
couple people.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean-
tiny. That doesn't mean anything. I'm spooky.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are these perceptions that have been created, right?
Yeah.
The gender roles and the gender norms, and people are like, okay, she's tiny, she can't do this to you, or even like, oh, so you can't handle her? You know, that kind of thing that always pops up, and you're like,
Yeah.
are you serious?
Well, I mean, I've always said this, like in a relationship, if you have to handle someone, you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with an animal.
Exactly, yeah.
Because you handle a dog and you handle a horse, you shouldn't have to handle humans.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a really good point.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
fair.
The language that people use, I feel that's actually very important. I like
It
that you brought
tends
that
to
up,
lend a
Alice.
lot to what's going on,
point.
more so than I think people realize a lot of the time when you actually start breaking down what people are, the words people are using and why they're using those kinds of words. You're handling a human being because you can't communicate with them, or you have to physically detach yourself from this person.
Yeah, if you have to walk on there's this expression, right? If you have to walk on eggshells around a certain person, yeah, you might not want to interact with that person or get away from that person, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's, in my particular case, because, I can, when I heard about the Johnny Depp story initially, I was, for one, I was great. I was sort of happy because I was thinking, finally, perhaps now we're gonna get, the men's side of, the abuse story, and, because we don't typically hear about that side of the story, so I'm thinking maybe it's going to take Johnny Depp in order to get that message out there.
I would be curious to, so I saw somebody on Twitter say something they said that, oh, this person's a Johnny Depp apologist. Can anybody shed some light on what the hell a Johnny Depp apologist is?
Someone that loves his movies and that will die to defend them.
But is it defend
They
them,
started-
or is it like defend them
Okay,
from
hold on, I'll
what? He
just
didn't
type it.
do anything. I don't
I
get it.
personally, to be serious, I think it sort of comes across the same thing as a rape apologist or a domestic abuse apologist.
Yeah, they're apologizing. So it's saying that,
Okay.
oh,
All right,
because
so
he's
what they
Johnny
have
Depp,
started-
you're saying he didn't do it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's being said that in a rush to vindicate Johnny Depp, his fans have become apologists for abuse. So maybe that's being saying is that, but that's wrong. Again, if you're
Right, that's not what's
apologizing
going
for
on.
abuse, you're apologizing for abuse. You're not vindicating someone if you're apologizing for abuse. So maybe there's some people who who don't realize that they are ending up apologizing for abuse, but actually they should be defending Johnny Depp. There's a big line of demarcation, because of course we know that, I don't know, yeah.
Johnny
If
Depp
someone
doesn't
else
need to be
wants to chime in on
defended
that.
because he hasn't done anything as far as anybody can tell. Yet.
Yeah.
I mean, to be
Yeah,
quite
again, yeah. So,
with me personally, Chess knows this because I've told her on Twitter before about my own experience, because I'm actually a domestic abuse survivor myself. At the hands of an ex-girlfriend. So,
sorry, mate.
I do know the sort of games that get played down. Now, a typical thing that there are some myths that go out there. Yeah.
Broadcast has been interrupted.
Ooh,
Oh,
please
yeah.
hold.
So,
He's got a woman
Yeah.
in the kitchen making him a sandwich.
Uh-oh.
that was my sister. She got some pizza.
Oh, and I'm hungry. I'm even more hungry. Damn it!
Yeah, but so,
Yeah.
I know the game and how it's really played on the domestic abuse card. A tip and what people, I was talking to Chess, I sent her a little message about the reasons why men stay in abusive relationships. And she said it's remarkably similar to the reasons why why women stay in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, and that is true, but I say you have to add another dimension to this where men don't really have places to go.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. The amount of resources that need to be allocated. There's a good number of women houses. We're starting to see more for trans people, which is good. But there's really not enough resources dedicated to men. So what might be good is to dedicate ones to people. Dedicate them to everybody, and then start making specialized ones for people who need that specification, because not everybody does. Some women will be traumatized to the point of they can't be around men. Some men, I'm sure, will be traumatized to the point where they don't feel comfortable being around any women. And for those people, they need that extra step. They need the ones to be secluded. But not every survivor, not every victim is like that. So starting out with people and then growing from there to then start doing, okay, this one specifically for women if you have this problem. This one specifically for trans people if you have this problem. This one is specifically for gay people if you have this problem. This one specifically... So that way if you're... Or who knows, if you're... whatever, different race, if you need something like that. It's to help these victims. It's not about whether or not... Oh, well, now this straight person doesn't feel comfortable being around any gay person. Well, maybe they don't. And that's not homophobic if they've been abused.
They're dickheads in gay community too. They're dickheads in every section of society.
It's about people.
That's all I always say. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sexuality, whatever. It does not matter. There are assholes everywhere in every fraction of society. So when people, there was this one time, if Shesh remembers, I called a woman an asshole, and that woman went off and she was like, how dare you call a fellow woman an asshole? I'm like, your gender does not stop you from being an asshole.
They expect a level of, what's the word, pandering almost? Sisterhood. There's another word for that.
Tribalism.
Tribalism,
Just tribalism, yes, yeah.
Tribalism is just a key thing. I mean, tribalism is a good thing to a certain extent if it's not good or bad, but and especially nowadays with the media, it's gotten way out of hand.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though, is, we can't improve until we stop doing that type of stuff. For example, I mean, people in the LGBT Q+ community sometimes won't call out like a gay person or
please tell me you're gonna go
for
like
example,
with
a trans person that's being
Jessica
an asshole.
Yaniv. Are we gonna go down the Jessica Yaniv rabbit hole?
It's
that what's happening?
Well,
it took a lot for people to finally call Yaniv out, and it's disgusting how far we had to go for that person to be called out, because at the end of the day, that person was a predator, even if they were trans or not. And of course it's been called into question whether or not they were trans in the first place.
They're assholes in every fraction of society.
Exactly. And the fact that people will refuse to call out others just because they like them or they think they're hot, that shit is not acceptable, and I'm so sick of seeing it. I really am. Some of the worst people I've met in my entire life were from the community, and they just got a pass for it, and that's not okay. And you see this breaking down of tribalism. You see people calling each other out, and I think among other things, that is one of the most it's good to see, because people have started calling out people for not calling out people, and it's like, you can't really
Right.
hide anymore.
Why are you letting this slide kind of thing?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that we are so much stuck in, if I might say, semantics of the argument, that we have stopped looking at the harm, the actual harm that might be happening. For example, that we are still like in society, some people are so stuck up about trans people or people who are, you know, transforming from one gender to another, or the homosexuality, that they don't realize that there's violence against transgender people, that there's domestic abuse in homosexual relationships also, and there's, you know, that there's that shit also going on in the background. So we are so stuck on the superficial part of all of it that we can't really get to the real harm that's being going on out there, and this is a disservice that's happening to the actual victims, actually. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, imagine this to be on the guy's side on this one is like, imagine being a gay man and you're in an abusive relationship with your male partner.
Yeah.
And for one, there's no resources really for you because, you know, you're a man. And two, you know, people in, like, maybe people on your own political aisle don't want to touch it with a 1,000-foot pole because they think if they say that, oh, well, there's abuse in this relationship, that you're giving credence to the Christian, the fundamentalists who say that the relationships can't work.
Yeah.
People are so busy
whole...
focusing on the fact that someone else is being, not abused, but
or somebody's
the fact that
being
somebody
homophobic.
else is being oppressed.
You're gonna get attacked
that they
for
just
being
let
homophobic,
them get away with it.
Yeah. And people don't want to call out because there's like a mob, like we lost him. Oh god, we lost the SJW mob,
Mr. Brass.
the SJW mob that can show up if you say something they don't like. So if you say, oh, this homophobic relationship, these two specific people, there's abuse going on, and the SJWs get a hold of this and are like, how dare you say this gay person is abusive? You don't know anything. And it's just like, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help. Kawasa for 10 said, well, if it ain't my favorite fellow troll as the guest seat, ... And also Puck gets a boop. Boop.
Yay, boopity boop.
He's been boop.
Yeah. So, I mean, another thing is, like, you know, I believe, you know, we go into, like, when it comes to abuse of men, is that a typical thing that, you know, I found that many female, like, the abuse that men and women do to each other, I've always liked to say that it's an abuse of an advantage that they have. Where men that I find that are abusive to women, they abuse a natural advantage that they might have over their partner, like their strength, and they're physically abusive. Whereas with women, I find that when they abuse their male partner, they're using their own advantage, like, which might be their emotional strength, and they use their emotions as a way to really damage a man. Now, of course, there are exceptions either way. I mean, I don't care how big of a man you are. If a woman comes at you with a frying pan and is hitting you on the head, you're getting hurt. But
Oh yeah. Do not, hell, it doesn't even have to be anything. If somebody has a weapon and you do not, the odds are you're going to get injured somehow in some way.
Even a gentle works sometimes. Yeah. And that can hurt. That shit can hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how, you know, when it comes to relationships, and many times I've found that, you know, like in my own experience as being an abuse victim myself, that my abuser used my own chivalry against me. Because, for example, and this is, I actually talked to other men that are been abused, and they notice the same thing with me, is where they'll say, where a woman will be hitting a man, and she'll be really going at him and say, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to hit me? You know, and, you know, because they know that the man has been trained, you know, from literally the time he could understand a command to don't hit a woman.
Yeah, I don't like that. I absolutely do not like that phrase in particular. That I file under toxic masculinity. It's not, it should never be don't hit a woman. It should be don't hit people except in extreme circumstances. Do you need to defend yourself? Then you can hit somebody. But no, don't hit a woman is bullshit. Your gender has nothing to do with it.
If you have one group of people where they believe that they can abuse you with impunity because there's a social rule to it that they can't hit you back.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be abused.
I think your what was it, generalization of men being physically abusive and women being more emotionally abusive runs into a different problem, though. I think that has less to do with whether or not men are stronger or not, and more the victims that they're more likely to find. Does that make sense? So essentially what I'm trying to say is that it's not that the man is more likely to be physically abusive. It's just easier for a man to find a woman who he can bully around with his weight versus a woman who's not going to be it's not as easy for her to find a man that she's going to be able to use her weight around in the same way. Right?
Yeah, both genders are known to
do all the
emotionally
above.
abuse.
It's almost all of the above.
And physically abuse.
And one thing that I have noticed is that most abuse tends to start with emotional abuse. It doesn't start off with somebody hitting you. It escalates.
That's where the boundaries are pushed first.
Yeah,
the desensitization starts happening.
Right, it escalates to that. And so maybe what you're seeing is more often men do not recognize that abuse until it escalates to physical violence.
Yeah. I mean,
that's just a lack of education, by the way. That's not like men are dumb. That is straight up just a lack of education. Because women are more and more, nowadays, far more educated about how to recognize abuse. And good.
I think so.
Everybody should be.
They have an advantage there, actually. That's how they're able to... women who abuse, they know how to work the system. I think so. There was this case in Australia where this woman, for I don't know however long years, kept on creating these stories about the ex stalking her and stuff when it wasn't the case, and it just took one female officer to come in and just look into the all the evidence out there with an unbiased perspective, and she immediately knew that the woman was lying. But
which is why it's good to have men and women and everybody you can have access to on something like the police force or an investigation or it's good to have diverse
the male investigator, however, went by this policy of believe whatever comes out of the woman's mouth.
Well, that's what we're seeing with the Johnny Depp case, that judge.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it goes into...
wrong.
I mean, it goes into like how the Duluth model. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that sort of.
What was that again? Which model?
It's called the Duluth model.
DELUTH.
Yeah, I think so.
I got it.
Yeah.
DULUTH.
Yeah, give us a brief rundown. What is that?
I mean, it's a model that is frequently used by the police in order to handle domestic abuse.
Is this an American thing, or is this like a little bit more out there?
It's just an American thing. I don't know how they do it in the UK, but
gotcha.
Generally the Duluth model, goes by physical attributes in order to know who to arrest.
Oh,
okay. I found something else.
That's bizarre. Philosopher 5 says men suffer from social pride issues too. Many are afraid to admit they're being abused by women. Yep, and a boop for Buck. Boop.
Boopity boop.
I mean, and we were talking about this beforehand about, male disposability.
Right, we didn't get to that, so please.
And this is in my own experience where men are pretty much conditioned from a young age to make themselves disposable. And by, taking on ridiculously dangerous tasks, whether it be working, and to me, what we don't really see in many societies, we don't really hear talk about, is that society is pretty much desensitized to the notion of men being in pain. Because, I mean, I actually looked, a good measure I found is when you look at movies, for example, of horror movies especially, they actually did some studies on this, but if you look at the most cases, most of the people that are getting killed in horror movies are men.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing when it comes to media in this regard. I'm not entirely sure I totally understand about what you're saying about disposability yet, so we can come back to that. But when it comes to...
Can maybe contribute a little bit to that, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
for
later.
Sure. When it comes to media, you run into two problems. Well, you run into a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems. We'll talk about that. But the two I'm talking about right now is you run into this issue where violence towards women is played for, like, either weirdly downplayed or weirdly overplayed. So there's only like 2 or 3 movies in existence that are American movies where a woman gets shot in the head. But women get shot in the head... Or sorry, that women get shot in the head doesn't happen, but men get shot in the head, like, all the time. But then you have, like, these, like, horrifically depicted rape scenes, and it's like...
Oh, yeah.
What? Why? Why is this a thing? And it's bizarre. But then you've also got, like, the trope, the action hero trope, where he just gets, like, slashed across the face and he's like, I feel nothing. It's like...
Well, I mean,
man,
you also have the
should see
same...
Bollywood movies, the old Bollywood movies, yeah, that trope, yeah.
Oh, hold on, I want to hear what... Nikki, what was that? What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
Sometimes you also see that in books, too. There's a lot of really disgusting, self-inserted, like, rape scenes and stuff. But then you also get to the other side of that, too.
Well, that's bad for everybody. That's bad for everyone.
Exactly.
And it's like, it doesn't mean that... It doesn't mean you don't have rape in your story or in your movie or whatever, but it needs to be a better purpose. Like, it needs to be for a reason, not just, a bad thing happened to a woman to piss off the male character so he can have some character growth. Like, hello?
That's
Please?
In media, women are used... Yeah, women are used as character growth. They're not their own people. They don't have their own aspirations. They're
Which
literally
isn't good for men
used
either, because it's not good for men to have that view of women, but it's also not good for women to have that view of men. That that's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
So like this, if I may add this, where the woman, a man is like all like cold-hearted and aloof from the world, but then this sunshine of a woman comes into his life and everything changes, and he's like now a good person and he's like outgoing and everything, and vice versa. Like, they're used as objects for character growth.
Rom-coms are the worst.
Both the genders
Oh
are.
God.
Yeah. Like, there's this woman who used to wear glasses and used to have like frizzy hair and stuff, and now there's a guy who comes in her life and she's like motivated to be like look beautiful by societal standards and stuff, so she like goes for a makeover and stuff. Hey, look, she's all sexy and hot and blah 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 blah.
And all of her problems were solved that day. So go ahead, Mr. Brass. What were you gonna say?
I mean, it is definitely funny, like, how that does play out with it, but I mean, I find some women use that to sort of their advantage in some cases. Because think about it, if you see yourself as an object, then it's very hard for you to consider yourself an agent that's responsible for anything.
Yeah.
Sure. There are women who will definitely like shirk responsibility or not own up to any. They're the perpetual victim, even though they're the ones who are they're the abuser in this case. Who do we know that? I think we know somebody who might fall under that.
Well, it's actually interesting that you'd bring up rom-coms, because I read this opinion piece, and it says men don't like rom-coms like women do, because the man is expected to do all these weird, crazy stuff, like
Pursue
give
the
up
woman.
their families for the women, quit their jobs, move cities, and
Really?
all of
Isn't it the
this.
other way around?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I mean, most of the time in a lot of rom-coms that are popular, you see the man sacrificing so much of their lives to work with women.
I have a couple.
And then-
I have a couple of like guilty pleasure rom-coms that I absolutely love. One of the worst ones is You've Got Mail. Everybody in that movie is an asshole. Everybody. That's one of the reasons why I like it. I watch it and I'm like, everybody here is shit. Everybody's garbage.
The bar is so low.
But I also really, really liked Kate and Leopold. Kate and Leopold has such an interesting dynamic of characters that it's just like, so this woman lives above her ex-boyfriend and he finds a time hole and he just jumps into it and then Leopold from the past comes back to the future.
Oh god.
And then he stays there forever with his.
And the
No,
time,
no,
the
no, he
time
doesn't
is
give up
standing
anything.
In a corner is like, am I a
Meg
fucking
Ryan goes back and lives in the past with him instead. So none of the men give up anything, but she gives up her life for him in that case. But she was kind of unhappy anyway, so
Yeah, it's
nobody
shown
loses.
a lot in
Oh, what?
Bollywood movies too.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought
No,
that
no,
he
she
came.
goes.
I
yeah,
haven't
she
watched
goes
that
back
movie
to-
in like 15 years. Don't judge me.
No, she they don't show any. That would have been I would love to see a goddamn sequel. I would love to see a movie about her trying to adjust to living in his time period and like their actual relationship, because you don't get to see the actual relationship.
I mean, let's be honest.
We
Though.
got
What
off
woman
topic.
would want to go back in that time where they had no rights? Childbirth was like 70%. You probably died.
Yeah, all badsies. So we were talking
No,
about
Cholera. Uh-oh.
We were
And
talking
if
about.
you're a man, and if you're a man, that the king can arrange for you to fight in a war for him for just any reason.
Well, to be fair, she was getting with Leopold, though. She wasn't getting with Joe Schmo. He was like...
To be fair.
Like a decorated... like he's in that top 1% you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that you will notice with like self-insert or like romanticism of a time period. People aren't talking about the time period. You're talking about a romanticized version of that time period. You're not talking about, I'm a coal miner. Right?
The
Right?
reality.
Like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So we were talking about male disposability, and
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I understood what you were starting with by saying... Yeah, let's go back to that, because I want to make sure I understand.
I don't know if Brass wants to maybe say something about that, then I will chip in later. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, male disposability is basically, if you want the simplified version of it, it's basically the notion that a man's life is worth less than the woman's life. Where basically if, like a common thing we hear about, a common example of this is, on the Titanic, where,
Women and
the
children
boats go-
first, yeah.
Children first.
women and children go first. That's an example of it. But you also see it in war as well, and they say, hey, you can kill all the men in this town, but don't you kill the women and children in
Because
there.
women are property, number one.
Yeah.
Women
At that
are
point in
considered
time,
property.
yeah.
And number two, they reproduce. So there's that thing also. So they're valuable property, which can give you more people to put in the workforce or into slavery, whatever you want to put
There
it.
was also
So that's why.
there's also this
Also-
idea that having men you'd be more likely to deal with insurgents, whereas the women were going to be docile and not do anything to you, because what were they going to do?
Yeah.
They're women.
Yeah.
Cultural societies, everyone. Yeah. So if I can do a follow up on that.
Well, that and there was no, in honor cultures especially, there was no honor in killing the women or
Right, because the
children.
women
Oh,
were
yeah.
property.
Kill the woman? Really? How
But
dishonorable
at the end of the
you.
day, the women are still considered to be property that makes babies. Property that
it's-
you can take advantage of sexually, physically, that type of stuff. men were disposable, but women were still property to make babies. Their
Yeah,
entire
it's
lives
weird.
were
So
This is where
it's
this whole thing
women
comes
were
from, if I may add to
valued.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's weird. So they were devalued in different ways. So you had men who
Yes.
weren't as useful as people, but women who weren't viewed as people at all, but still worth something, the equivalent of money. Or
Yeah,
land.
money,
Or a
something,
cow.
Money and
That's why
sexual pleasure
marriage,
as well.
the concept of marriage came in, because so that property could be passed down from one family to another in a way, without bloodshed. If I may add to that, for example, I work in occupational health and safety. Men are told to suck up sometimes
That's not good.
in their roles, whatever job they're doing. When we start talking about providing more tools and providing the environment for people, which include men too, to work safely, there are people who say, pish posh, because, well, it's common sense, and man up or suck it up, and it's generally for men. And also, the women are told, oh, this job is not for you, this is for men. Again, the disposability part, whereas the armed services before were only exclusively available to men, but now they're available for women too. So I was told when I was a child by my father, when I said I want to be an air pilot, and he was like, "Oh no, that's not for girls." And I was like, so and till last year he tried to get me married by saying, "Oh well, who's going to take forward the name of the family?" And I'm like, "I'm not taking the name of the family, your name. It's the guy's family's name that I'm going to be taking forward by giving birth to his child," or something like that. So yeah.
Your family name sounds like a you problem.
Pardon? Sorry?
I said your family name sounds like a you problem. Better start pumping out another kid.
Yeah, I mean that is funny about how that does work. I mean, I think that goes into I think that's called patrilinear, or how they. I mean, I can't remember how they say it. Patrilinear.
Technically, also it's the same. I'm going to be carrying out the genes of my husband, like whatever genes my husband has. I won't be carrying out any genes from my family or from my mother's side, if I might say. So genetically, also, it's kind of provable.
Well,
so yeah.
Another funny thing that people don't really take into consideration is that while you guys did make an interesting point about the women being as sexual property, which I do admit that is a big problem. But
it's not a competition, right? It's shitty for everybody. This is bad for everybody. It's not like, oh well, women are more important because we're persecuted more. Like no, it's shit for everybody. It's bad for everyone.
Yeah.
All the men get killed, and all the women get to have a bad time until they die. Yay!
I wanted to just say about when it came to sexual property that it also came down to one little thing that it also. Since women were called sexual property, the idea that a woman could sexually abuse a man was just absurd.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Because
it's still to this day the idea.
Well, unless it's a trope.
This way, I like to say like this way. Imagine if someone said your TV forced you to watch it. You would find that notion to be absurd.
I mean, people do that on social media. People will be like, I had to watch Steve.
Yeah, but I mean, people would think that, it's an absurd notion because it's an object. It can't force you to do anything.
Right.
And that's sort of that's what, people, that's how I see what the women being a sexual object thing says. Well, a woman can't force you to have sex. She's your sexual property. So.
Or you get the other way, which is, oh well, you probably liked it.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
Rape apologetics.
Especially when with underage male children.
Yes, that's where it's really bad.
Oh, this was the becoming an adult moment for them, isn't it? It's considered that way. It's considered they should consider that moment as something as of a trophy. They acquired a trophy rather than they were abused.
It's perpetuated on children too. Also, right? On to young boys.
It's a conquest for men.
I was
something that happens
told I
to
can't be a
women.
pilot.
Well, it's also like it's something that gets taught into them sometimes from a really young age, and I think a lot of parents don't realize they've done it, where they like see their kid looking at an older woman, like, and I mean like from really really young. I'm saying like a toddler, a 3-year-old is like looking over at a woman because they've, I don't know, don't see another one besides their mom before, and they're just looking, and the dad's like, look at that little sport ad. He's already encouraging.
He's going to be a gamer. He's going to be a ladies' man.
Right, and then
oh my god!
And then
don't even talk to me about the straights and boyfriend girlfriend with their 3-year-old children.
The women are, and the women are supposed to be.
Then
like,
they're 5 and they're doing
going
it,
to
and
be a
they're
beautiful
6 and they're
girl.
doing
Men are going
it.
to run after her.
And it
Well,
just
imagine
perpetuates.
this way is like, you know, I talk about the sexual abuse that goes on in public schools.
Oh
And-
god, yep.
You know, for instance, you'll have a story about a 30-year-old female teacher that has sexual relationship with a 12-year-old
Yeah.
male. And they'll say, you know, and no one in the article wants to say that this is statutory rape. They don't want to call the woman a rapist.
Yeah, or a pedophile.
And then the responses are like, oh, I wish I was that boy, and it's like, you're just
when I was
you're
that
literally
age, I would have
re-victimizing
wanted
this child who was manipulated and abused by an older woman. Like,
I mean,
what?
shit.
If I may, just kind of, it goes into these conversations we have about transgender people also, how they are perpetuated, especially men who transition to women. They're perpetuated as predators because they are viewed as men and not women anymore.
They're also viewed as
they're always
objects.
viewed as men.
They're also viewed as sexual objects because they're assumed to have the, like, quote-unquote male sex drive, so therefore they want to fuck all the time.
So
and it's like, no, they're a person! Stop!
Yeah. What they don't realize is, irregardless of the gender, any child is in danger of abuse in a toilet. Any toilet. Male, female. Doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
So to try and say that transgenders can't access the toilets of their respective genders because they are possibly predators, but it's not brought up when women transition to male. It's always brought up when male are transitioned to women, because, you know,
Well, I mean,
however you can take it, you get the gist what I'm trying to say, right?
Well, yeah.
Because men
like
are supposed to be the stronger people in the perpetuators of crime. Women can't be, like Mr. Brass said here, right?
I mean, another thing that goes into another problem, another funny thing I've noticed with trans people as well, where, I mean, we always talk about how we have to protect women from men in these sports, but I'm saying I've never heard once say that we have to protect men from women in long distance swimming, even though women in marathon swimming, because women on average tend to do better than men in marathon swimming.
Okay.
So
yeah, try to stay away from that topic.
I've never heard say, we need to protect men from women. It's always
the cross-channel marathons and stuff. Yeah, we have mixed teams who have performed a lot better than either the male team. They have performed better than the pure male teams or pure female teams. Yeah, so.
In Canada, for the Olympics, when it comes to hockey, so if any of you have ever seen women's hockey, watch it. It barely gets televised, but oh my god, they are savage, and they're so good. God. And so when the Olympics come around, the men and the women.
You want to start a war with the Canadian? Just say that their hockey team sucks.
You just have to find out which hockey team they're going for, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Well, and female rugby players too. Oh my god.
So what happens when the Olympics come around?
Female soccer players.
Yep. So what happens?
Male soccer players be what's the word? When they fake throw themselves.
Oh yeah.
Flopping.
Yeah.
They'll be flopping everywhere, but a female soccer player will have their nose broken. They're like, no, I'm fine. It's fine. Let's play.
Yeah,
there's
I can vouch for that.
So
That's
cool.
happened to me, and I'm just like, give me a handkerchief, and my coach is like, fucking use your sleeve.
Not getting you a handkerchief.
Rub
use your
some dirt in
sleeve.
it.
Like,
When what happens in the Olympics is the women's hockey team and the male hockey team play together, and so they do intramural where
like
they've got
that.
both on each side, and then they'll play against each other, and it's like a toss up who's gonna win. It's not like they're like, oh, the men are so much better. But the thing is the men have a lot more opportunity to be better because of how much the NHL is televised and how much money they make and how much money is invested into their training. If you were to invest in their training, into the women's training, a closer to equal amount, I would watch the hell out of women's hockey. They're so good.
People
They're
keep
so fun to
saying
watch.
when it comes to equal pay and stuff, oh well, women's sport is not that popular. It just depends on the audience. The audience wants to watch men.
The audience aren't provided a
how
choice.
much advertisement money and advertisement goes for male sports than female sports? Okay, but I think we are going on a tangent here.
We're getting we're off
main topic.
But actually, that actually leads into something else. How much abuse goes on in male sports like football and in locker rooms and with coaches and with the women's gymnastics is apparently fucking awful. I can only imagine how bad. I'm curious because the female stuff in gymnastics has only started coming out in the past couple of years. So if that's going on the women's side, and now what's going on with the men? Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that goes into, I find male disposability in a way too, is that, for example, the NFL had a major problem with concussions. That's a big issue that they had.
Oh God, yeah.
And think about it this way. Imagine how, for many of these people, they've been dealing with concussion issues for decades, and they didn't come out about it.
Oh, they've been shoving it under the rug, shoving it under the rug, shoving it under the rug.
Yeah, but
I mean, there's that whole study that they did with men who have had multiple concussions, especially football players.
Football, yeah.
And they have a condition in their brains that makes them violent, or it damages some part of their brains in some way, and they're only just now doing the studies to try and figure out what's going on with it, how they can fix it, stuff like that. And it's just it's horrifying. Like, for example, there was a football player that was beating his wife, and then he passed away, and they did scans on his brain, or they dissected his brain after he died, and they found out that he had that. That's how they discovered it in the first place. So now they're trying to figure out how it manifests itself while these players are still alive, and there is barely
and the
any
NHL is trying to
going in for these people.
Well, the NHL is trying to curbtail it, right? The NHL is trying to actively stop investigations because they don't want, and they're afraid of any changes happening to their game because they don't want to risk losing money. But if they were smart,
NFL
they
too.
would. Right. If
well,
they
imagine this way as well, is that these men, for many of these men had concussions while they were playing, and their coach just said, "Oh, that's fine, just keep playing." They know that they had concussion problems beforehand, but they just continually pushed them out and to continue playing, despite the fact they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, there's a whole
that
movie
does not fly in hockey
about the rampant downplaying of concussions and how much money they spent to not only subvert but shut down any studies done on concussions because they didn't want to take out their best players.
Well,
and these men are literally dying. Meanwhile, and they don't give a shit because
trying to push.
That's not a man.
And they're trying to push
that's somebody that makes
teenagers.
them money, and they care more about the money than they do the human person.
And they're trying to push teenagers into these sports, and they're basically bribing them and taking advantage of them, because that happens more to men than it does to women, because that opportunity for women doesn't exist as much. So so men are stuck in these situations where they're spending their entire career in college being forced to let their grades slip, even though they're like, oh, no, they have to maintain this, to lack having this education while they're forced to play with no benefit. None. Zero. They get nothing.
Yeah, no injury benefits. Yeah.
No injury
Also,
benefits, no pay. They don't get a percentage
no
of
time
their
off,
own merch.
no recovery period.
They basically get sold. They're basically they sign on, and
all
they're
the while
underage
these
when they
colleges
sign
are
these
making literally
contracts.
millions of dollars off of these
Right.
Yeah,
young
like-
men.
And they never tell you about, like, for example, they never tell you about the case that where you'll have some colleges that they're so dedicated to football and stuff like that that they pass these players who obviously should be failing.
Yep.
And they don't. Like, they had one football player that came out about it, and they found out that even though he was in college and he had all that, he could only read on a sixth to 8th grade level because they paid him. I mean, they basically just they just kept passing him, even though he shouldn't have been passing.
Right, and the argument is that but they're getting a scholarship to get free education, but they're not getting the education.
Yeah.
They're not achieving that basic level that they need for.
It's a
world out
con.
there. Yeah. Also, it's funny like how like the disposability of men comes into play here. If a player gets injured and he decides they need time for recovery, one, their pay is uncertain whether they will get anything while they're on their time off and in recovery, and two is the organization that they have been playing for, whether they support that recovery time and that all that money that will go in that recovery process, like the doctor's appointments and your physiotherapy and all that stuff. Plus,
being an athlete is so difficult.
Policy. Being an athlete
is so difficult.
Your return to work policy. They'll be like, well, I'll find someone else to do this job if you're not gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it goes into the supply and demand, where they'll tell these players that, they honestly should have been, like, they come back early from injuries, specifically because the coach says, well, you know how many people that would die to be in your position and play football?
Well, they manipulate them.
Team?
It's abuse.
Yes. So, you either come back right now or within a week or so, or we're just giving your spot to someone else.
Yep.
And we'll terminate your contract.
Yeah, and then what are they supposed to do about terminating the contract? They don't have the education to know dick all about anything.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, I can see that being a problem.
So they found out a common problem is that you'll have these men that they have 6th to 7th grade level able to read, like on a 6th to 8th, 7th grade level. They're beaten within a pulp because of all the football and stuff that they've been playing, and they get out after about a couple years of the NFL and they end up homeless.
And they have nothing.
Oh yeah.
And though they've been paid,
They have
this
no
amount of
money management skills.
Well, that and they're
basically didn't
encouraged
learn
to
anything.
spend the money because of the culture. So the culture is, hey, you just won a game, go drop $7,000 on a night out
At a strip club, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's also funny, like I know that there are management agencies who manage players, but how do they manage those players? It's like a different story, isn't it?
Speedy Smoke said, I heard scholarships can be dropped if you get injured. See, if you wanted colleges to actually give a shit about their players, that shouldn't be allowed, because you should want your players to be healthy and not risk losing the money on that scholarship, because let them finish their schooling, assholes, if that's the case. God damn.
I mean,
Right.
men are already, underrepresented in college as it is. Nowadays, it is. Men are...
Do you have the numbers on that? Are they?
Right? That doesn't sound correct at all. I've heard the exact opposite. I've heard only within this past year has the number gone up from 27% of women being in college.
I know women tend to get the degrees more than men do.
But 27% of, I think it's either women, it's either 27% of women go to college or graduate from college, or 27% of colleges are women. And that doesn't take into account the specialist ones that are basically 90%
So I'm picking
male.
college specifically, and so in 2010 In 2019, men were at 35.4%, and females were at 36.6%.
Yeah.
I remember, where women...
And that's completed. That's completed 4 years of college. That's finishing it.
I mean, I've heard that women are getting, they're getting the degrees, and men are falling behind in education nowadays.
Now, has that fallen
the-
behind as in equalization, or has that fallen behind as in, like, women are getting a
Comparatively to last
pass and
decade or
men are
something?
not? Something's going on over here.
Well, I mean, yeah, I also like to remember, because there's a common misconception, like, for the longest time in American history, education was sort of a luxury that, unless you were either rich or you knew a guy, you didn't get education, whether you were man or women. I believe what skyrocketed men in order to where they got more education than women was with this thing called the GI Bill.
Okay.
Where basically men said, all right, look, you guys fought in a war, and we're going to compensate you for fighting in this war for us by giving you educational opportunities.
So this one is saying
Well,
50...
that's another manipulation tactic, especially in America.
Sure.
Yeah.
If they were to get rid of tuition in colleges,
Oh, that would
I
change
feel
everything.
like the number of people going into the military would be far less, because they use those programs to recruit minorities who are trying to quote unquote get out of the hood, or basically just make a difference in their lives.
It's to take advantage of class. It's not so much.
Yeah,
It's not so much
exactly.
race. It's definitely like to take advantage of people who are young and who are unable to, who feel like at the very least that they're unable to do anything, and some of them are. So they're in a position where they're like, I'm from this town, I want to educate myself, I'm being told that the way to get out of the situation I'm in is through education, and the only way I can get an education is to join the army. Right? And that's a class,
Well, no, that's
definitely a class
like,
issue.
The recruiters in America,
Yes.
the recruiters have go specifically into lower
High
income,
schools.
and again, it's not race, it's literally class, and
It's class that is unfairly
money.
skewed towards specific
Yeah.
races.
Yeah, exactly.
Because history.
Like, people literally, like, if you don't have good connections with your family, if your family, if they don't have enough money to put you through college, they won't give you any money for college.
For university,
Nobody will, what's the word? Lend to you, depending on, like, your family
education
situation
loans and
too.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. There was
My
this whole thing
Google
that came out
search-
about it recently.
My Google search is showing that it used to be 58% were men, and today 56% are women, so it's balanced out.
Yeah, but I was saying, a big reason why men used to have, like I said, back, I believe when the first feminists came out, it was actually pretty even between, because funny enough, the first feminists were a part of the middle class of their time.
Are you talking about second wave feminism, like the rights to vote and stuff?
First wave feminism.
Okay.
Many of the first wave feminism were part of the middle class of their day. Although I find it funny enough that people don't realize that many of no, of course not all. Some of them did realize the hypocrisy of some of it, what some other of their day did, where many first wave feminists were racist.
Yeah.
Where they were
Absolutely.
Yeah.
where they were only promoting
Many
the
people
interest
of that time period were racist.
Yeah, where they were only promoting, the empowerment of white women.
Well, that's the thing, though, is white women won the right to vote, and then
19th century.
Black women, it was 1946 that white women were able to vote, and it wasn't until 1960 something that black women, or is that native?
I think so. New Zealand got
that's
got the right
pathetic.
to vote way before than that.
The Athens 5 says, I don't
America is so behind, but at the same time, the shit that the suffragettes had to go through was way worse than what American women had to go through. If you ever want to learn about some actual struggle, if you want to know about like some brutal, horrifying things that happened to women when they were trying to get the right to vote, read up about the suffragettes. Those were the ones in Britain, and their
I would
fight was
definitely recommend checking them out and then look at what's happened then in Europe, and then turn that and look towards what's going on in the Middle East right now. The Athens for 5 says, I don't remember the movie, but an entire film was made on the concussion/injuries that happened in football and the NFL, or a coach was denying them.
Yes.
I remember. Boopity boop.
You know, and another
He's
thing
trying
is
to
that
take
they
a
have
nap, and I
nuances
just keep
and-
poking him in the nose. He's so unimpressed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever.
And, you know, what people fail to also realize is that men really didn't, per se, if you read the Constitution and you read how the rulers word how they did the laws and stuff back then, you'll realize that men didn't get the right to vote. They earned it by registering for the army.
Well, if they weren't landowners, yeah.
So, I mean, and many men that did fight for the army didn't have the right to vote. So you know, imagine how how much angry that must get you, is that the fact that you're willing to die for your country, and they still say you can't vote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's an issue with a good... there's still things that are going on right now that are like, wait, why are 16-year-olds getting taxed for working when they don't get to vote?
Exactly. And why aren't they allowed to vote when, especially in America, when the current government gets to borrow from the future coming generations?
Right. I'd be content with two
our
things.
birth rate is going down tremendously.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's gone down in Canada. One of the
I'm okay
reasons
with that.
why we're... it's not... The thing is that I think people put too much... People put a lot... Particularly when it comes to capitalism, people put a lot of... Their basket is focused on growth, when that needs to shift to maintained. It's not about getting bigger. We don't need a higher and higher and higher population. We don't need our population to go up. If our population goes down some, we'll be fine. It's okay, as we have our essentials that can be managed.
We have the
as
automation industry taking over half the jobs anyway.
Exactly. We'll be fine. We'll
Get
manage.
them skilled, upskilled.
Please just shift the idea of capitalism into maintained. That equal line, that equalization of like maximum profits don't equal maximum growth. Not the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because here's how the thing goes, is that with a lot of our social programs where, you know, like, I believe, I can't remember which one of you said it, but, you know, the younger generation is paying for the older generation through their taxes, but the system as it currently is, if you have a low population of people, you know, that's going to become harder. They're facing that problem in Japan currently, where it's so bad there that there's actually more adult diapers than there are regular diapers for babies.
Yeah, there's a couple population problems. China's also going to be facing that if they're not already, because they kept killing all the women babies.
I mean, well, it's
the femicide that happened there.
It wouldn't be that big a problem if they adjusted their social programs to taking that into account.
No, no. It's not their social programs that were the problem. The problem was the social pressure of having men having to carry all of the burden, where women were viewed as taking
care of their parents, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
After they retire, blah blah blah. There's a town in Haryana, that's a state in India, where it's all men now. There are no women left to marry, and those guys are just growing older and older, and they're just still like.
It's a whole town of incels.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's what they don't tell you
And
about.
that's dangerous too, because if I may just finish that thought, it's adding to human trafficking of women. Now,
Right.
what's happening is they're paying for women to be kidnapped from other states and be brought to that area and be forcibly married off.
Well, I
Doesn't
mean,
matter. Sometimes the age also doesn't matter.
I mean, here it's interesting because I actually looked into it, and there's a. Generally speaking, in an ideal population, you have about 51% men and 49% women. That's sort of an ideal because men generally die younger. So, as the population gets older, it sort of just, it evens out like that. That's sort of how it generally works out.
Well, yeah, it's there's always going to be a fluctuation unless there's some kind of
Plus, minus
external
tolerance,
pressure,
yeah.
like killing all the women babies that you get.
Yeah, the fetuses, yeah.
Well, what they don't tell you about that, is that the one, like, it's, I don't know how the Chinese government didn't predict that would happen, but it's sort of like,
they were going to run out of women eventually.
well, I mean, it's sort of like this, is that
That the preferred child will be a male child, and then they will run out of female children. Yeah.
well, I mean, what's happened is that you combine two different things. You a one-child policy, plus the notion that only the men are obligated to take care of their parents when they're older.
Yeah, that's also very prevalent back home in India. That's a big social pressure, and if it's actually parents are shamed if a daughter ends up looking after her parents. That they're like, oh, she should be with her own family. She should be married by now with her own family. Why are you, living off your daughter's income or something? That
So, in
shaming
China,
also.
yeah, and you can read it in China where parents sue their sons for not taking care of them.
Well, part of
What?
the
Yeah, in China that happens where, the parents sue their sons for not taking care of them.
Well, yeah, I can understand if like it happens in India sometimes. What happens is that parents, it's a joint family situation, but the son ends up, or the child that's actually living with the parents ends up ousting the parents out of their own property, and stuff like that, and then the parents going to court and suing to get their property back and something like that. But to sue your child for not taking care of you, there's something fundamentally wrong there. That means that you have been just raising a child as your retirement plan. How selfish is that?
yeah.
I mean,
How
that happens.
selfish is that?
I mean, it happens, sadly, but I mean, that's how it goes into. It's like if you have
it's like that
where
in
you
the
only
list too.
expect when you only expect one gender to
Yeah.
be responsible for taking care of parents. I mean, and you
Yeah.
only have one child policy.
Yeah,
So
why is any child expecting, like, it might be a very controversial thought, but unless you're sick, why should a child be expected to look after parents? Like, I
There
don't get
is
it.
a degree of, like, once your parents are old enough that they can no longer do anything, there is an expectation as the closest family member as a child to be the one to go and check up on them, make sure they're okay.
Yeah,
blah,
I
blah,
can
blah, blah, blah,
understand
blah, blah.
that.
But there's a difference between having, and this is one of the
A
reasons
servant.
right, but this is also one of the reasons why people are concerned about population growth, because if our generations are not producing enough children, then they are not going to be able to take care of the elderly's pension plan, meaning that they're going to be out of a house, meaning that they're going to be screwed. And that's because the forethought is on projected numbers, and those projected numbers are not matching
The
what we're
borrowing
getting.
from the future generations, yeah. Yeah, here we go.
I mean, well, like I said, with China and the one-child policy, I mean,
Are they
if
really
you
that
only have-
wrong to be like not to expect the people, the individuals, to be so horrible as to throw away a child based on their gender? Like literally
No,
dumpster
you know
baby?
what they do is, if you do end up having an extra child, in cases of twins, what they do is they take away one of the twins and they give them up for adoption.
I mean, sure, but what I'm talking about is that, is it wrong?
And the parents get penalized. Sorry, go on.
Is it wrong for the government to put this one-child rule in to not expect that their population is going to literally start dumpster babying all women?
I mean,
On
I
its
know.
face? No.
Yeah, go on.
I mean,
Well,
there's,
in India, for example, it's illegal.
She said go on and then
India-
just went.
Sorry, my bad. I will just let you speak. I'll just finish this thought. In India, the preference of the male child and that expectation that's put on male child, it's there. Plus,
It's a social thing, yeah.
even though, it's a social pressure, and it's funny how social pressure kind of overtakes what's lawful and not lawful, because it's illegal in India to detect the gender of the child. The doctors can lose their license in India if it's discovered that they are doing gender detections. But still, people end up doing that, and still, female feticides happen. So it's very interesting, like how these prejudices find their way, through laws also.
Think about it like I've said. If you only, have, for example, if we reversed it where we said that only women were expected to take care of their elderly parents, I mean, you would notice that then right after that, men would just be being killed right out.
It depends on what the expectation is, because in that case you
There
might
is a
end up with a
community in
double
India
standard,
that does
right?
that. I'll talk about that later too. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just how, that's an economic pressure that you put on. If you can only have one child, then there's an expectation where the parents want to maximize that one child that they can have.
Right,
Yeah.
and they also want the child to have the maximum amount of benefits that they can have. And so if women are at a disadvantage, and it's likely that child, because they're a woman, is not going to succeed or not be able to do what they need to do, including taking care of them at a later date, then
Yeah,
give
you're
rights
just
to
setting
women.
I mean,
Right,
but
exactly.
here's what's funny. I mean, I actually looked it up. In that whenever you have a population where the male female ratio is just way out of balance, you notice problems either way.
Right.
It's not just like if there's less women; it's also if there's less men in the population.
Yes.
There's problems that develop because typically, historically speaking, there is many times when there's just not enough men because of war. Like, for example, where men go to war and there'll just be so many men that are killed that the gender balance is just where it's like 4 or 5 women to every 1 man. And in that situation, what you generally happen is polygamy comes back in full force in that situation.
How come polygamy doesn't
hell.
come back in full force when
It's
there's...
prevalent right now in India. It happens.
Wait, hold on. That
Exploitation
sounds
of
like a
women.
double
Fuck.
standard. Let me just hold up. I'm hearing a double standard here. This is a hypothetical, though. This is a hypothetical.
Okay.
So,
Alright.
if there's too many women and not enough men, polygamy's fine. But if there's too many men and not enough women,
Well, I mean,
Polyandry.
still not polygamy.
Okay. Hold on.
Personally,
There's I think so in both spaces there is a lot of room for exploitation of women for some reason. In both spaces.
well, I mean, it also comes down to this way. It's like, I mean, many women don't like to hear about this, because men, we constantly have to hear about abusive men, which there are those men, they're assholes, I readily admit. But, I found that if I talk to women about gold diggers, fame whores, many women I tell about that sort of stuff, they say, they look at me, they look at me like deer in the headlights, like I'm talking about this new breed of women that just came out recently, and that they just find out, no, these women have always existed.
There's a trope called a femme fatale. That exists. Like a man-eater.
Yeah, I mean, and let's think about it. Some women, some cultures, some women would rather be the 5th wife of a very rich man than say the only wife of a regular man.
The only thing that I find problematic
rather
in
have
either
3
of those
boyfriends.
cases is consent. The thing with gold diggers
Consent.
versus a more common domestic abuse victim, male or female, is that very rarely is this gold digger situation non-consensual. There are some.
Yeah.
There definitely are some where it's a young woman taking advantage of like somebody who is senile. Like somebody who's very, very old and cannot really be making these decisions.
Yeah.
That's sad. It's horrible. That's abusing the elderly. Don't do that. But there's also
Don't do that. The
grooming
goat
that takes place the other direction, where the woman gets accused of being a gold digger because she's young, but she's actually getting taken advantage of because she's young and doesn't know any better.
There's
and
that power
dude is in
dynamic
his
there,
40s.
and it can happen in cases of older women and younger men too. It can happen in that
Yes.
regards
Oh,
too.
absolutely. There
And
is definitely
that we
cougars.
don't
Cougars are a
realize.
thing. Cougars are a thing.
Yeah. So yeah, again, but see, when it happens with women, it's taken, if I may dare say, it's taken seriously, and there's a lot of hue cry about it. But when it happens to boys, it's about, it's a growing up moment for them, and they're supposed to take it on the chin, or
they're supposed to have
this
liked
is like
it.
a trophy for
Or
them.
be
Yeah,
proud.
they're supposed to like it. So I think so. In India, there's a act called POXO or POSCO. I can't, for the love of my life. It's an abbreviation. So, in which gender doesn't matter. If the child is a minor, it's being exploited. Man or woman can go to jail for it.
Yep.
And it
As
has
they
been brought
should.
into
I mean, I think that's what really needs to happen is like, my personal thing is whenever I hear about, let's say, an older public school teacher having sex with a 12-year-old boy, I make, because they'll generally dress it up in the article. They'll say, oh, woman, 30-year-old teacher has a sexual encounter with a 12-year-old boy.
Right.
As if this was just her going out on a date with a regular man.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, that's
I feel
not
like
cool.
puking listening to that.
There's a we need to stop gendering pedophilia. Probably.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether the person who is doing the attacking is female or male or trans or non-binary, whatever. Gender is irrelevant. Sexuality is irrelevant. Man on man, girl on girl, fucking relevant.
Yep.
Don't gender pedophilia.
yeah, I mean,
It's less
Exactly,
less
and
that
that
too.
plays into that bathrooms thing too. That
what's funny
discrimination,
about it is that, like, what we don't notice the difference is that, when men are sexually abused as children like that, especially by women, there's, you liked it. But, what I find funny is that there is a reverse to that where they say, well, wait, are you saying that women can never, enjoy a situation like that? Like, so I mean...
Yeah, the women are supposed to be sexual objects. They can't be the perpetuator, right? So they're supposed to be.
Not just that, it's like women are not seen as like they're capable of enjoying a sexual encounter.
That's the thing.
Women.
The myth of the woman orgasm.
Yeah, society does this thing where sex happens to women, whereas sex for man is a conquest.
Conquest, yeah.
And his reward is sex.
That's the word, yeah.
Reward sex is the worst.
And you run into a lot of problems with that because people then turn it into not only just a game to play.
Yeah.
They start ignoring things like consent. They start pestering. They start harassing. And there are women who will just give into it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the mentality right there. That sex is something that happens to women, and for men it's a conquest. Is that you run into both of these things where women will be seen as not an abuser, not a rapist, because that's just something that happens to women. She would never go out and force it on somebody.
Right.
Whereas, again, with men, you see, she just didn't fight hard enough, and then, there's so many situations where that mentality has destroyed people completely.
Christ Puncher for 2 said, here's a toonie for some Timmies, eh?
Boopity boop.
Yeah,
and I've
like in my situation where you know, I was myself. I was sexually, emotionally, and physically abused by my ex. I was so grateful to get out of it myself, but you know, the dynamic is that, you know, like, she knew how I was raised. I was raised diehard chivalry, and you know, she would punch me, you know, kick me down there and stuff like that, just normally, and laugh about it.
Ugh.
Wow.
And say, you
Oh,
know,
where have I heard that up before? Amber. Yeah, okay.
yeah, and you know, and she would say, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna hit me, big guy? You gonna hit me?" And I'm like,
Ooh,
you know,
I hate when people do that. Fuck.
you know, that's I find, like, if you know someone has that sort of honor code or whatever, or just that general code, and you're taking advantage of it,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I call that emotional abuse.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
Like,
It's
you know,
definitely
you'll see
manipulative.
videos of
Physical
women
and emotional, hitting you and then daring you to hit them back. Yeah. Fuck.
yeah. Well, it's like you see videos of that shit of women literally beating the shit out of a dude, getting physical, taking their shoes off, hitting them with shoes, and then as soon as the man literally pushes the woman away, every single person is screaming at the man who was just abused, and then the man gets beat up by several other women. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
There's
how is that?
I
How's
think
that
it
fair?
happened. Yeah.
How is
I
that
think so. It
okay?
happened once. Yeah. There was this, I think so, chick who was so drunk. She was a doctor. I think so. This video went viral where she hired this Uber driver, and there was some altercation, and the Uber driver told this lady to get out of his car.
I know the one you're talking about.
And
Yep.
she went on a rampage. She just and she was getting in his face. She was. And what he did was, in the end, he pushed her back away from her. And because she was drunk and tipsy, she fell on the ground. I don't know, but that is self-defense for me. And that is what I would recommend a man to do. If a woman is getting in your face, push her away from you.
Yeah,
Right?
but then you see
most of the time, that guy, he didn't even touch the woman. He was walking away from her, and to get away from her, he got out of his car, and this woman got into his car and not vandalized, but yeah, made a mess of his car, threw out his papers, whatever he had,
no, she meant
and made a mess inside. And everybody was just standing there and just watching, like, call the cops for fucking sake, and tell that girl to just stop. Like,
It's about
I think so they were people. I think so they were telling her to stop.
It's
but
about
she was just on a
education.
rampage.
It's about people needing to learn and needing to understand that abuse is universal. It does not matter, and that there are ways of handling it. How do you approach that? And I think a lot of men don't know what to do
No, they don't.
when a woman comes at them
There are no
physically.
tools for them.
Right? And so you do end up in this situation where, okay, I've had this talk before a couple of times. I think chivalry is sexist. Not because it's all bad. Not because it's all negative things. It's like, it's chivalrous to hold a door for a woman. Just hold the door and be polite. Chivalry should be about being polite to anybody, not to a woman. As soon as you make it about gender, you've made it sexist.
Yeah. Or like, you know, opening the door for your loved one. That's opening the door for your loved one. Anybody in any kind of relationship can do that. You know, if you're first at a door and you hold it open for people, that's super sweet. But why does it have to be, you know, gendered? So I completely get that.
Chivalry originally was a military ethic.
I heard it was a knight's code.
The knight could be considered the military at the time period.
Yeah,
very true.
but, you know, and that's how it originally was, where there was a code where, you know, that would be how the knights would have to treat the serfs of the day, where in order to keep order, and eventually later on, I can't remember, it was a queen or something, took that and married it to the concept of romantic, of, you know, the relationships.
Yeah, the way men should treat women. And again, we're back in a time period where women didn't have shit.
Well, here's the thing, is, like, men have always, you know, I think, you know, there is some evolutionary psychology behind it, but, you know, men have always wanting to protect women. That's just sort of
It's
how
testosterone.
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't think
It's
that's
a
about
property
women.
thing also.
I also don't think that's about women. I think that's about protecting group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of like
And
this. It's that,
Families.
it's sort of like this in a way. Is that I say about? I'm trying to think how to word it correctly. But it comes with the fact of the matter is that to a certain extent, tens of thousands of years ago, it was necessary for men to be somewhat disposable, because that was
Men
simply
would go out and hunt and acquire other land for agricultural purposes, so women were left behind as the setting stone for, for the property.
It was disposable
So-
in different ways.
I
was disposable
called
in
it.
different
It
ways.
wasn't about rights. It was about obligations, and it was about survival.
It was about survival and it was about being effective, right? So it was men were effective in this and women were effective in this, right? So
Yeah.
because women and because the differences were maybe not even necessarily any greater, but the need for those differences was greater. So even if a woman might have been just as good or just as useful as hunting, it was more beneficial because they could, feed the children. They're able to stay back and feed the children because feeding the children was a primary concern that needed to get done. Women have a tendency of being more dexterous than men. That tends to be why women's gymnastics is higher watched, right? It's a higher watched versus the male gymnastics. It doesn't mean the men are any less interesting to watch. It doesn't mean they're any worse. The reason why the women would be staying home is because they're more dexterous. They can build the tools easier. They can weave the baskets easier. They can do the farming easier and the tending to those things because they're naturally more dexterous. Whereas men, having a higher endurance when it came to walking or running, ended up, because the need for those things was so much so much of a difference. Not necessarily because one was too much better than the other. A woman can take pretty much just as much damage as a man. It only becomes a problem when you start getting to elite sports. Only then does that difference start becoming problematic or start becoming important, right? In day-to-day life, if I get tossed down a hill and a man gets tossed down a hill, we have equal chances of taking the exact same amount of damage. No, they're not going to be able to tell.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Both are dead. Both dead. Tossing
Yeah.
down the hill.
Or we're both alive. That
you cut
happens.
off like I said, if you cut off a man or a woman, they're both equally dead.
Yeah, or you cut off an arm, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
so originally, tens of thousands of years ago, it was more of a survival-based mechanism.
Yeah.
It wasn't about what was fair. It wasn't about, oh, do I prefer to be like this? It was because we literally had no other choices. We had to survive. And
Right. And that disparagement meant more than it does nowadays. It doesn't mean as much now. It doesn't matter if you can walk an extra 5 minutes than I can. It's completely irrelevant. But once upon a time, that fucking mattered.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it might
it
might matter in military and stuff, but then you can train women to catch up onto that. You can train women to do that if you
There's
want.
different niches within those things, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to take, for example, the idea that we should be the fire department should be forced to hire a woman. Okay, that isn't concept that can be discussed because there are reasons why you would want that and why you might not want that. The point is that they're a team and they're a unit. Because I've heard people make the argument that, well, I don't want this 90-pound woman trying to drag a 200-pound man out of a burning building. It's like, yeah, that's because that's not her job. They're a team. Her job is to get into places that the man can't get into because he's too large. Her job is to... Right, her job is to do this or to do that. It's not a one firefighter doesn't come to deal with your burning house. They're a
There'll be
unit.
4 people who end up making a makeshift mattress for the victim and carry them out. So those 4 people can be 2 women, 2 guys, or even 4 women all together. So yeah.
You also end up in a
Yeah.
situation where the woman might have an easier time strapping something up because they're just that much more dexterous. Right?
I mean, you know, I've
She has been
said-
knitting more sweaters.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, you know, like we go into is that, you know, at one point it was necessary for men to be sort of disposable because, I mean, it is a
Yeah.
constant thing because, you know, one man can theoretically, you know, populate an entire village by himself. Or like a group
Right,
of, a
you're
small
talking
group
about-
of men can, but while, you know, if let's just say you have a
A woman's
society
only going
of
to have one baby a
1,000
year. Yeah.
I mean, imagining like you have a society of 1,000 people. If you know, 50 men that like let's say a couple hundred men that die in that society, that doesn't mean as much because the other guys can just take over, they can populate.
As
the
in, as
You want a
in,
baby?
you only
You want a
need
baby?
you only need one man. You only need one man. Versus several women, because one man can impregnate more than one woman.
Yeah, well,
I
yeah.
get
so
what you're
you-
saying with that, right?
Yeah,
That's what
you
you're trying to
wonder-
say?
You
you
end
know-
up in this situation where you've got how many children can a woman have in a year versus how many
exactly.
women can a man have in a year.
365.
Yeah, so I mean,
At
If you
least.
don't want to work on a Sabbath, that's another thing, though. But yeah.
that's
How
why-
many
I mean,
times
that's
can a
why, you
dude
know,
jerk off in a
sperm's
day?
cheap, but eggs are expensive.
Right?
Yeah.
How many times can a dude jerk off in a day? If his only job is to jerk off and
Alright.
okay.
365 into 2.
Right, okay, so assuming only 2 in a whole
I'm
day?
just going with a minimum number, okay? Average minimum number.
I'm gonna say average is 5. If that's all he's doing. All he's doing is jerking off. I would think that
365
5
into
times.
5. That's like that's like 15,000 plus 65 into 5 something.
And how
I mean,
many
well, like, you know-
how many kids can a woman have in a year?
Just one.
Yeah,
Only
or-
one.
so I mean that's why you get, you know, so it makes sense in that time frame where, you know, men would be more disposable because, you know, if half your men die, like in say a war, I mean the other men, the other half, you know, can easily take over.
I mean, it kind of
Whereas-
depends on the society, right? It also depends,
Well,
like,
true. I mean,
if
I'm
they-
saying like in general, but if half of your women die, then
Oh yeah.
yeah,
that's
you
that
fucked.
becomes more of a problem.
What were we talking about earlier with Japan and China having?
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean that's where it
Haryana.
becomes difficult.
Yeah, you
So-
definitely end up with problems in both scenarios because you end up if you end up in a situation where it's like, oh
And
man, I've
further
got to
contribute to exploitation of women and men.
I've got to replace these warriors and these soldiers. Are they just fodder or are they officers? Like, how well are they trained? Because losing them is a giant pain in the ass. But then again, if you lose an entire fucking village of everybody, you're gonna be like, how do we
Oh
repopulate?
shit.
So I mean,
Japan
you know,
has some really unique problems with
People don't want
the
to
fact that-
marry. People don't want to
Yeah.
reproduce. They're just like,
And
yeah,
it's-
I'm happy in my little corner. Thank you very much.
honestly, and it's not even that like they're overworked, which they are. That's a very, very bad problem in Japan.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
That's
people
actually
literally
a cause of infertility. I think so. One of the
Stress,
causes of
yeah.
infertility. Yes.
well, not
stress,
just that, but these people are literally working themselves to death, and
yeah.
more specifically, it's actually a more of a man problem. Men are literally having, people, but the larger percentage is men, are literally having heart attacks
wonder
because
why.
they're working so much. At 20,
Yeah, they're
at like
expected to
20,
work, isn't it?
30 years old, they're having heart attacks and dying. But that's not just the only reason why Japan isn't having kids. It's just
Stress
that they
also
don't want
lowers
to,
your
too.
libido.
I think I heard
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
about, you know, in general, like I think in America, I don't know if this transfers over to Japan, but I know
Oh,
in
no.
America the testosterone and sperm rate or something is going down for men.
Well, no, it's
Yeah.
just it's literally they're being raised to focus on their careers, and they just don't want to have kids because why have
Having
kids
a
when I can
rela-
just live
Right.
my life? type of
Having
thing.
a relationship and having children and raising children is all work. All of that is work.
Yeah.
So if you're
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
taught
Here,
to
somebody said it. Here we go.
Yeah, if you're
Somebody tell that to my parents.
if you're taught to if you're taught that you need to focus on your career, you need to make as much money as possible, you need to do this and this, who the hell has time for dating? This is one of the problems I have with politics. It's like, who the hell has time for politics when you gotta work 40 hours a week and then have your family and then have your yard work and then maintain your house and your living situation? Like, who the fuck has time? And with both people working 40 hours a week, assuming they're even on the same shift, who the hell has time for anything?
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally.
And then you get in
with where they're both partners are just really working each other hard. And, I mean, it comes to the point like, well, where's the time for us to do anything together?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or where's the energy too? You know.
Yeah.
Especially if they have kids.
Laziest sex
Because both
ever.
people are working. Yeah.
Too tired.
And then
for
you also
sexy
run
times.
into like the sexism that comes in with that is where the man and the woman will work, both of them will, but then the woman comes home and she has to clean, cook, make sure the kids are ready for bed, and even then, you know, even if she doesn't work, she's still doing that anyway.
Well, I mean,
but then
that also goes with the men too as well, because you know, some men, they'll come home and their woman says, "Oh, well, you need to help, you know, fix my car, you know, that we have, and you have to help fix this and this and this appliance in the house."
Yeah, you run into this problem where there's this expectation, and it shouldn't be an expectation. It's a joint venture, right? So so it's not about, like, if your expectation is, I've seen this, and I'm only bringing this up because I recently read a story about this, and it was essentially a situation where this woman was not allowed to have a day off. She was a stay-at-home mom, but they had 4 kids. The youngest one was 2, and the oldest one was like 10. And so she got up at 6:30 in the morning so she could have coffee, get breakfast ready, wake everybody up, get everybody ready and off to work and off to school, take care of the 2-year-old and the other one that wasn't in school yet, I think. It was like 2 and 4 or something. Take care of them throughout the day, then make sure there were snacks, and then lunch, and then people got home from school, help people with their homework, entertain the younger kid, clean 1 room a day, and 1 deep clean a day, then clean everything else in a general sweep throughout the day. Dude gets home from work, does nothing. It's like...
Holy
and
crap.
Because he works...
Unpaid labor,
Because he worked 8
fuck's
hours.
sake, anyone?
Because he worked 8 hours that day. So then the weekends would come, and he would be taking time off, and he would get to play with the kids, and he would get to spend time with the kids, because that's a problem. If the man is expected to be out of the house doing all the work all the time, and then doesn't get to bond or spend time with his kids, that's a huge deal. That's devastating. You miss your kid's first step because you're fucking getting your ass beat at work all day? That's awful. Yeah. And I think people underplay like the how sad and depressing that is, and then you end up with these situations where men are not, like, struggle to connect with their kids, and it's awful, and they don't know what to do, and the kid doesn't know what to do because they don't know how to communicate because they haven't been around each other.
My bonded over chemistry. We would go for walks, and he would like test me on my organic chemistry when we would go for walks. That's what the bonding time was.
That, you know, I mean, basically, if you have the expectation of men where men are, you know, seen, you know, they're obligated to be the breadwinner. Like, they don't have it, like, you know, with many men is that they don't really get the choice in it, where they say, hey, you know what, I would like to be, you know, stay at home and take care of my child. But then the minute that they say that, they say, oh, well, you're a dead, you're not going to really work.
A deadbeat dad,
I heard a story.
Even though you're saying that, hey, look, I want to take care of my children. I want to be there. I don't want.
They're shamed for not working and staying at home and looking after kids.
One of the ones that I find is really subtle and really disgusting is when a man is at the playground with their kid by themselves. So it's just the dad and it's the kid.
And they're looking for the mom, and they're like, where's the mom? Where's the mom?
Well,
Where's
people
the mom?
are looking like the dad
selfish.
like he's some kind of creep, and it's like, he's there with his kid. Why are you... What the fuck?
Oh, it happened here in New Zealand. One of the fathers, he was using the baby changing rooms for his little toddler, and there was this woman who started shouting at him, like, yeah, this is for women and their kids, and dads are not allowed. And he's like, I'm a parent, look at changing my toddler's diaper, for fuck's sake, like, what the fuck?
That's not cool. That's so not
really,
cool.
You know,
Again,
is-
that perpetuality that only a male can be a predator but can't be a nurturer. Like,
Right.
No,
Yeah.
but that's isn't
21st
that
century,
funny
for
though?
fuck's sake.
Okay, so there's a problem with there not being changing rooms for men, but why is it now when men are single parenting their kids, is it becoming a problem that there's no changing room in the thing? The only
It's-
time I've
yeah.
ever seen anyone other than a woman complain that there's no changing rooms in the men's bathroom is when a man is like having visitation with their children. It's
There's
so
this
sad.
there's this bizarre thing where it's this women are maternal thing isn't just
Yeah.
bad for women. We need to focus also on that there is a whole other problem, that if women are maternal and can't be the problem in the relationship, you've got this whole second half of the population that's like, but I want to spend time with my kid, but I want to go to the park and not get looked at and treated like I'm a creep. I don't
Yeah.
want to be treated poorly because I decided to have kids and I want to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Or I'm
you know,
useless.
there's definitely an issue that comes with men, where men are treated like, men that just want to throw the ball at their son, are seen, sort of like predatory. And I'm like, the guy's trying to, like, especially if he's a
Like, put
divorced
their
dad,
daughter in a swing and push the daughter on a swing. Like, it's looked at some sort of, like, creepy behavior, like,
he's just trying to be a dad.
I
yeah.
don't see that as much.
I
I-
just,
Yeah, we
I
don't,
don't-
but there's some people who are, like, still stuck in the, whatever, 18th century.
there's an
No,
interesting
I
story
don't think
that
I've heard much of that problem. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody complain that somebody's come up to them and said, "Hey, you're creepy." With that type of
It's
thing.
usually not that somebody says anything, it's that they're getting these dirty and weird looks, and people have definitely called the
Yeah.
cops before to be like, hey,
Exactly.
there's this weird guy hanging around the children's park, and it's like, he's a dad. What are you
Is
doing?
that your
He's
child?
a parent. He's a parent, for
Right.
fuck's sake. You
Is
dead
that your
motherfucker.
child, sir? Where
Right,
did you get that
exactly.
child? Child,
Yeah.
where's your mommy?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
where's your mommy? Like, they don't ask that from a woman. Like, hey, is that your mommy? Where's your daddy?
Well, then at some point, okay, so when I was a kid, kids say stupid shit too, right? Like, so they're not helpful. They're little drunken potato sacks. When I was a kid, I
Yeah, I was a
was
drunken
running
potato
around
sack.
outside, and I ran over to the neighbors because they were all just hanging out, and I just yelled, "Mommy beats Daddy!" Nobody was hitting anybody. They were playing a game, and my mom won. That was it.
Oh, they must be having a pillow fight or something, and you're like, oh, mommy beats daddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Kids are stupid as shit.
Yeah, kids
They're
are
not
pretty,
helpful.
they-
Where's your mom?
They can
Oh,
be very honest and like really stupid at the same time.
Worst case scenario, you've got like some poor single parent, single dad who's a widower, who's at the park with his son. The cops get called, and then they ask the kid, "Where's your mommy?" "Oh, she's gone. She's been gone for a long time. I haven't seen her." Fuck!
Yeah, you make the child relive all that stupid shit again.
Well,
Thank
you make
you
the child
very
relive all the
much.
kid, but now the cop is like, so this kid is kidnapped and by this dude.
Yeah, I've heard that problem also.
And you know,
A
for-
dad in a biracial relationship.
Oh,
his
yeah.
children
Oh.
are paler than him, and he's had the cops called on them. I've heard that
Oh,
happen
yeah.
with mothers too.
Also, yeah, and also it's funny like how this whole kidnap thing, when this happens, it's how that using that to their advantage, women are able to take their children away from their father to
Yeah.
other countries
Yeah.
and leave the father behind, and the father ends up fighting for the custody in an international custody battle. For years,
Yeah.
it has happened before.
That's
Just
fucked
all
up.
because, where's your mommy? Your daddy's not supposed to be with you. You're supposed to be with your mommy. And
Yeah.
it's okay
Yeah.
for a woman, even when there have been court orders that the women are not supposed to take the children. Men do that. They do that. It's a power play. Men do that, but women do that too. And then they use that as a power play against men. It happens in both genders. Both can be assholes. Thank you very much.
It's a bad
What
time.
happens? Another case that really happens is that we don't really notice is that in at least a current modern day America, father's rights really only extend as far as the woman in the relationship wants them to extend.
Okay. Okay, if we're gonna start talking about the fact that women will get custody and more custody and main custody of the children, whereas the dads get visitation rights, that is sexist. It is because the woman is seen as the better option because women are meant to mother and nurture children.
Yeah.
So
it's a matter of this.
I don't want to hear about that because that is incredibly sexist and it's something that is a massive problem.
It's a matter of we're back to this is bad for both parties. Women being viewed as maternal figures is bad for men. And women, it's bad for everybody.
I also like to tell you that originally speaking, that in a more patriarchal culture, it was the men that would get the children more than the women because men were seen as having the financial obligation.
Well, they weren't just seen, though. They weren't just seen as the people who had the resources. They were the only people who were allowed to have the resources.
Yeah.
Like the women, women couldn't even find jobs. That's why the divorce rate has gone up because women now have jobs, so they can leave their husbands who are abusing them. This is not a men versus women. It's stuff is shifting, and it was shit for both parties type of thing.
Yeah, it's a matter of go ahead.
People don't a common thing that people don't really think about is that I remember whenever I bring up arranged marriages, for example, is that, well, I ask, what's the problem with arranged marriages, just as a hypothetical, and people will say, well, what if the woman doesn't like the man? I've never once heard the opposite. Well, what if the man doesn't like the woman?
Is that not because of the way that... okay, so as far as my understanding goes, we should probably wait till Monty gets back, because I think she has a little bit more information on this.
Absolutely, yeah.
The man is already making a decision on the woman.
Yeah.
The woman doesn't get a say, period.
It's not the culture, really, but...
I'd rather ask Mania because I'm not sure, but from my understanding, it's usually the man, the woman's family is going to the man's family and say, hey, do you like our daughter? And convincing them to go with this daughter, and sometimes they have more than one family that comes in to do that. So the man is making a choice. Now, to be fair, once the arranged marriage is settled and they all do it, they might not like it after the fact. Mania, we're talking about arranged marriages, and I'm asking you because I'm racist and you're from India, so I want to know if maybe you have more information on this.
Two situations. In most of your middle-income families, it depends on income also, and it depends on which profession you're in, because for example, in politics and in business, a guy might not get a choice because it's a business merger of families. So
okay. So the woman doesn't get a choice, the man doesn't get a choice because this is the parents above have made this decision for them because they're the ones operating the business. Understood.
Yeah, both cases.
But if it's a general thing, like a middle-income family, generally the guys get to choose from a number of girls. It used to happen. Now slowly it's happening that girls also get a choice, but generally girls are always told you have to compromise a bit. I was always told when these arranged marriages happen, Manya, it's always the woman who ends up compromising, and I used to hate it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, another thing is people would say that in many cultures where arranged marriages happen is that whereas it was seen as that men would have a choice, in theory, where it says, all right, you have a choice. In practice, not really, because, many times at birth, if it's a business sort of arrangement, this has been planned from their birth, that this is who they're going to be.
We're back to that 1%.
Politics,
right.
Business and politics.
And what happens is that while the man, in theory, has the choice where he can give up the woman and go with another person, in practice, he really can't because
Oh,
in order for him to
after the
do that,
marriage is
he-
over.
What happened to Prince Charles? Did we see what happened with Prince Charles? He was in
Well-
love with Camilla, but he couldn't marry Camilla because of the class differences and their status differences. He was a prince, she was, I think so, a commoner, blah, 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 blah. I think that was the story, but he couldn't marry her. Then he had to find someone else to marry, and then everybody was ruined in that marriage.
Yeah, I mean, well, what happened is like, you know, so whereas men wouldn't, so while men would theoretically have a choice, it would not be in practice because in order for the man to opt out, he would have to basically say that his, he'd have to dishonor his family.
Or justify it. Or you'd have to justify it. So
And then, like, once the it can happen. Yeah, there's an illusion of choice. I can support that because once the engagement is done, you can't get out of it. It's going to dishonor the family. For example, once the engagement is done, especially in Indian culture, it's such a fast-track thing that it's actually after the engagement or after the marriage has been finalized, the asshole in each of the boy and the girl starts coming out, and then you suddenly realize, oh, we are not compatible, but now you can't say no or opt out of it because it's going to cause embarrassment to the family or dishonor the family. I know when I broke off my engagement twice, my parents were by my side, but the relatives, oh fucking lord.
There's also something to be said for
it's an illusion of choice.
Well, that's the thing with men. I might go for a little bit more. Like after the fact, everybody's fucked, right? But during ahead of time, the man still doesn't have freedom. He has a choice. But he doesn't have freedom. So he's still screwed in the fact that he may be able to pick between these women, but he doesn't know anything about them, or very little about them. Or like, when you get married and things change. That happens in a lot of abusive relationships. A lot of abusive relationships, you're not choosing to marry somebody who's abusive. You don't know that they're abusive. Right?
Yeah, I have firsthand experience in that.
Men are still not free to marry whoever they want in an arranged marriage. They're still stuck with whatever options are given to them in the arrangement. It's like I'm not allowed to eat whatever food I want. I have to choose from this specific diet, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, it can, with some men in some cultures, it can be more of an illusion of choice where it's more choice than the woman has, but in theory get out of it, but
still bad.
Not really, because in order for him to get out of it, he has to basically say, "Oh, my parents don't know anything about me. They don't know what makes me happy. They don't." He basically has to dishonor his family before he can get out.
Yeah,
or justify it, right? Like cheating or something.
Yeah, again, the illusion of choice in the class and caste kind of thing. In India, it would come down to caste also, because then you have limited choices, right?
Yeah.
These are the girls. You can't find any you can't choose any other girl out of this circle because they're not of our economic status. They don't belong to our caste, or they belong to the lower caste.
It's like the
blah,
exact
blah, blah.
opposite
So,
of the. It's like the exact opposite of the incel problem, where the incels say that women are always marrying up, whereas when it comes to arranged marriages, it's the other way around, where men are always wanting to marry a woman of a higher status than where they're at. What a flip!
It's acceptable for a guy to marry a woman of the higher status, but a guy of a higher status marrying a woman from a lower status, that's frowned upon because, well, you are rich, how can you marry someone? Or it happens because there's room for exploitation, and blah, blah, blah. Dowry system. Now, there are two types of dowry system. One, which comes under general Hindu traditions, and the other one, which comes under Islamic traditions. Both are abused. Let me just tell you about, both can be abused. And in the Islamic dowry, traditions, it's the men who end up suffering because they are the ones who pay the dowry to marry the woman. In the Indian tradition, it's the women who pays the dowry to marry the man. It's like you're paying to get married. Yeah, it's complicated. If anyone wants to have a talk to me about that, I can. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what people don't realize is that, like, the purpose, at least from what I know about when I go back to ancient Near Eastern societies and I look at how they did it, the purpose of the dowry system was to ensure that the woman would be taken care of by a financially capable man. And it was not uncommon for women to compete with each other to see who could get, like, a higher dowry.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, it was a competition. I am more worthy because I'm more beautiful and I got more money than you. I can pay the dowry, you know.
Look at
I
these!
get the
Look
point.
at these childbearing hips, dough. I can
Don't
pop
lie.
out like 7 more kids than you can.
yeah. So, I mean, that
And
definitely
boys.
happens. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it definitely, you know, so, I mean, on one hand, you get that expectation where, it's to give a woman a financially capable man, but also it also sets the expectation where if you're a man and you can't afford the dowry, then you're basically worthless to the
Yeah.
society. You consider it.
Right,
It's
and that like
it both fucked up, so fucked up, man.
There's no
and-
winning.
Yeah, and it's
No.
also
This
like
type of
this
thing.
pressure
No.
is put on men. You know, as soon as you get married in some cultures, the next thing is, when are you getting a kid? When's my granddaughter or grandson coming? When's my grandchild coming? And that pressure is put on both men and women to just going off like that. So yeah,
I mean, that just
too.
happens normally.
And I think so. Maybe if I may dare say, let me may take that wild guess. In today's times, it's acceptable if women are infertile, and the shaming is becoming less and less.
it's getting
Let
there.
me just
It's
say,
getting better.
acceptance is there more than males. If the males are infertile, they're they
I
are the laughing.
Barely ever
No,
hear
I
that
don't-
even talked about. I barely even hear that ever talked about. Now that could be a bad
Yeah.
thing or a good thing depending on the situation, but very rarely.
Where I come from, it's a third world country. Yeah, let's say, you know, multicultural society.
I thought
yeah.
India was a second world country. I thought it had both.
Ooh.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Yeah.
Because
But
like
yeah,
Mexico is a second world country because it has places where it's like
I'll
a
have to
third world
recheck,
country,
actually,
and then
yeah, I'm
yeah,
quoting
places
like
where
from
it's
10
a-
years ago.
Does that mean America's a
world?
second world country and so is Canada? And Canada's listen, our internet and our telecommunications is worse than a
like,
third
you
world
know,
country.
I've
It's
always
awful.
found it, it's just funny. Is like, as a guy myself, I mean, I've lived in both ghettos and trailer parks, in my time frame. So I found it funny because, I lived it, I can obviously, since I'm white and living in a ghetto, I'm obviously going to stand out from the vast majority of people. But from my time living in both trailer park and ghettos, I noticed the cultures are very familiar.
They've got
ways.
similarities. It's because it's a class issue. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
people are people, and why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? Basically, it means that there isn't that much of a difference. Classism is far more of a problem than pretty much historically anything else. If you're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
like social pressures, and like that's not to say that racism isn't a problem or isn't a thing,
Yeah.
but a lot of racism stems from classism, and a lot of
Yeah.
current
Well,
racism,
no, that's the
especially
thing is that
in America.
racism, in a lot of instances, is literally just
Chat wanted
I
to see
need
my
to
hairy ass
feel
legs.
better than somebody else.
Look at that. I haven't shaved
What?
in ages.
I mean, this might sound, controversial for me, but, I mean, I've always said, with sexism, homophobia, racism, and all that, to me, the problem to me comes with it is when it's endorsed by the government.
Right. Yeah, that's
when
a
it
whole
becomes a
other
more,
problem.
like, to me, for example, there are ableists, legitimately people out there that believe autistic people should be killed.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's no good.
And, guess what? I'm autistic, and you know how much those people worry me on a daily basis? Not much.
Or they use autism and like ADHD and neurodivergence as a way to
But,
like a pawn like
yeah.
anti-vaxxers
Yeah. Yeah.
will
I mean-
use
Don't get me started on that.
Oh yeah, no, we can't. We don't have time for that rabbit hole today. Another day. We're actually getting to the end of our time, so
Yeah.
we should
Well,
probably
no,
start
it's like
wrapping
it's
up.
like I was listening to
She's doing it anyway.
anti-vaxxer because someone was making fun of her, of course, and she said that the ADHD, which is what I have, is one of the it's one of the side effects of vaccinations, and I was just like, I'm not your fucking pawn. Like,
Right.
I can't imagine what autistic people must feel
Just like
about being
pro-life
used as a
people
pawn
do.
as well. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
pro-life people do, anti-abortion people do, you know,
Mhm.
use children as a pawn, especially people with neurodivergence. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
tell me
Emotional
about it.
manipulation.
right.
I mean, I think it like, to me, my problem with all those, like, like the forms of bigotry is when they're endorsed by the government.
Oh,
Yeah.
Uh,
We should
Oh, yeah.
save that for another day, though, because I know Sweet was not able to make it today. Unfortunately, she got caught up in a different... I know I didn't mention at the beginning that we had 4 of us anyway. And I also didn't know until we'd already started. So I am
Yeah.
now aware and can now inform you Sweet was unfortunately unable to make it due to some scheduling conflictions. So... She does want to come on, and I know she wants to come on with our guest today, Mr. Brass. So I think we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point and talk about this even a little bit more. And I think then we can start getting into some of the government stuff. Exactly. In fact, hold on. I'm going to make a note.
Government stuff. On the calendar.
Government endorsing or encouraging. I have to spell things. I have to sound things out like I'm 7.
Me too. It's okay.
Bigotry. Sweet. That'll be a fun topic. Woohoo! So yes,
Nice.
what do you guys all got for kind of wrapping up a little bit, just because we're starting to get over time, because it's good conversation. It's good conversation, right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I would say I liked the conversation. It was nice getting to talk to you guys and getting to really delve into some problems, and I'm glad that we could both come to realize that there are problems that both, like, the sexes face. And I think that, having mutual respect with each other over these sort of topics is a very well thing to have. I had a lot of fun
Not getting
talking-
heated over small things.
Yeah.
Puck's got sleepy zoomies.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, is he like swimming in his sleep or something like that, paddling? Sorry, I got distracted. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's how as a society we have started realizing that, men face the same men face the same pressures and issues as women do.
It seems to me that there's a problem when it comes to if one part is sexist against one party, even though it's against one group, it causes problems for all other groups. It's bad for everyone. Things that are bad for men are bad for women. Things that are bad for women are bad for men. Why? Because we all live together. Things that are bad for trans people is bad for everybody. Things that are bad for non-binary people is bad for everyone. Things that are racist are bad for all races. It's shit. It's bad for everybody. Nikki, what do you got?
Lady who did that experiment, with making people realize who are in positions of entitlement that, and she asked this question to the audiences. Okay, people, if you want to be treated same as the other side, please stand up. And nobody stood up because they knew there's a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny.
I mean,
Not
personally,
funny, like,
I think what will make the thing coming, I think what would really help both sexes if they come to realize that we need to renegotiate the
All
contract that
sexes.
we've done before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we need to realize that there are benefits both sides have, and we need to be able to say, well, how are we going to do society now that we're changing and we're evolving? past standards that we used to have.
Yeah, it's about an evolving social structure and how evolution, even biological evolution, is affected by social evolution and social pressures. Nikki, what do you got for us?
I think that probably one of the best things said tonight is what you just literally just said, is that this sexism, this bigotry toward one side is bad for everybody, and you see it in almost every part of life. And the only thing you can really say is, my biggest thing when people are trying to tell you that they're having problems societally, if a group of people are trying to come forward and let you know, let it be men who are being abused, whether it's people of color that are telling you, just shut up and listen. Just be quiet and listen and just open your mind and open your heart, because the way to combat ignorance and stupidity and hatred is knowledge and education and compassion. And that's what changed my mind. I used to be a conservative, right, pro-life, racist person who is also religious. And it literally took me taking a step back and shutting my mouth and listening to people for me to change my mind. Compassion and understanding and love will always win out, and just try to take a second if you feel defensive, if you're like, oh, I can't accept that, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not this, just be quiet and listen to what they have to say, because 9 times out of 10 you will learn something, and that is more important than anything else, is learning and listening and having compassion.
Yeah, and just to take us out, on the other side of that, don't accuse people of things. Sometimes people are just ignorant. They don't realize that what they're doing is harmful towards you. They don't realize that they're necessarily part of the problem. And unless they can listen, you're not gonna change anybody's mind if you're saying, oh, hey, you're sexist, and dismissing them. Listening comes from both sides, and sometimes you have to, at least when it comes to communication, it's not a competition. And if anybody is going to take anything out of this, it's not a competition. This is not a men versus women issue. This is people are assholes, and those assholes need to stop being assholes because they're assholes to people. Misogyny towards women is bad for men. Sexism towards men, anti-men stuff, is bad for women. That doesn't help anybody. Listen to each other, try to communicate, do your best not to be accusatory, and, Nikki's right. Listen, communicate, and do your best.
Shut up and listen, and it's not a competition. Here we go.
Say bye, everybody. Bye!
Bye everyone.